Hello everyone, welcome back to another video of my opinions about classical music. Finally, after the wait, I am ready to share with you my opinion about the Bach double from the Twoset Violin's 4 million subscriber concert. But before we do that, I want to say hello to all new viewers and hello to all my old viewers. Welcome, I'm super happy to have you back here and I really hope you'll enjoy this video. So to start off, let me just talk you through my method of note-taking for this analysis. If you've seen my two previous videos, you'll know that I use yellow for great parts and green for excellent parts, and white for all the other good parts. Because, as usual, there's no bad parts in this. But in addition to that, there's another layer you need to know about. Because this is a duet, I've decided to color code my comments to each individual player. So all the parts that are written in blue are directed at Brett, or the first violin, and the comments written in red are directed at Eddy, or the second violin. And whenever there's comments that are directed to both of them, I have written that in purple, or lilac, I guess. So, now that we are all in the loop, let's get started on the first movement. So the first movement is the one I suspect most people know about and have heard before. And one of the first thing I noticed when they started to play this piece is how well they lead each of their sections. And now some of you may be wondering, what do you mean by that? So let's just look at the first few bars here. Here you can see that the second violin part is actually the same as Eddy's part. And if we move to the next bars again, we see that the first violin part is the same as Brett's part. And that is because back in the day when Bach wrote this, it was normal for the section leaders to be the soloists. And when we watch the video in a second, you will see that Brett and Eddy moves their violins about to show some phrasing to their sections. And I think they do this really well. Obviously I can't talk to the section to confirm, but I think it's quite clear what they want. And of course, they're both former orchestra players, so they would know the importance of doing this. Now let's listen to the first part of the piece, and I want you to pay attention to how they move when they play. Another thing I've noticed that they do really well is transitioning between the different parts. It was kind of obvious in the previous part we listened to, but it's even more obvious in the next part. If it wasn't for the score or the fact that we have a video to watch, I don't think we would have been able to tell who plays when. And I think this is really obvious in the next part, which we are going to listen to now. We are actually going to listen to this twice. The first time we listen, I will not be showing the video or the score, and I want you to guess who plays the melody the first time around. And the second time we listen, I will be showing the score and the video, and you will be able to tell if you were right. So let's have a listen.
Could you tell? Let me know in the comments down below. But my point is that this continues to happen through the entire piece, not just the first movement, so I encourage you to look out for that. Now there's only 2 more things I want to point out in the first movement before we move on to the second movement. The first one being this round of the solo. They play it multiple times, but in my opinion this is the best version of it. I think it's mainly about how crisp it is for both of them, but also about how they imitate each other. And the last thing I want to point out is unfortunately something that could have been slightly better. And I don't really know who it is, if it's someone in the orchestra or if it's Brett or Eddy or who it is, but in the end here we have a ritardando. I know it doesn't show in the score, but they still do it, and someone anticipates it a bit before everyone else. So see if you can notice that as we listen to the last round of the solos and the ending of the first movement.
2 weeks later.
Just to let you know, this is actually 2 weeks later, because after recording the first movement, I caught a cold and I lost my voice for about a week. So I just wanted to apologize for the long wait, and also if you think my voice sounds different, that's probably why. So with that, let's move to the most beautiful movement of this piece, and that is the second movement. Obviously, I think they did this movement wonderfully, and it's absolutely beautiful to listen to. I really like the opening, and at the first glance it's perfect. But of course, if you look deeper into it, there's a few details I would have changed slightly. And as I said that, I could just hear the keys flying of the people who comment, "Oh, who are you to nitpick other musicians' work?" But anyway, one of the things I noticed is that it doesn't seem like they've talked about how they want to play the different melodies. Both their interpretations are wonderful, and both could have worked perfectly fine, or a combination of the two even. And obviously if you just listen to it once, you won't really notice. But as you know, I've listened to this a few times in preparation for this video, and in doing so, a few of the things I noticed were that Eddy uses more vibrato than Brett, and obviously there's a discussion on whether you should use vibrato with Bach at all. I think it's dumb that we're having this discussion at all. Bach didn't indicate whether to use vibrato or not, so I think it should be up to the performer. But anyway, the second thing I noticed is this articulation right here. Eddy makes these notes quite short, while Brett doesn't. It seems to be a recurring theme that Eddy puts more thought into the Bach than Brett does. And to be fair, Brett's probably had enough to think about with the Mendelssohn. It's not as evident in the first movement, and if you know about Twoset at all, you know that they've played the first movement quite a lot in their concerts. So they have their way to play the first movement, while the second and third movement they probably rehearsed for this concert. So let's listen to the opening of the second movement, and see if you can notice the differences in their interpretations. It's beautiful, no denying that, but there's a few slight differences. Now, in the second movement, I have two favorite parts. The first one is the part following right after what we just heard, and the second one is the ending where they play the exact same thing, except with swapped roles and a different key. There's just something about the timbre of these parts that I really like, and I think they're good examples of how natural their musicality together is. Let's listen to the first of my two favorites and see if you agree with me. That's beautiful, I think. Now for the next part, which is actually my favorite, the previous one was my second favorite really, the ending of the second movement. First of all, we have a great transition from a soloist role to a accompanist role. And then following that, obviously the great timbre of this part. And then the whole ensemble ends on this beautiful ritardando to finish up the second movement. Let's just hear the slowing down of the ritardando first, it's really nice. How nice is that? Now let's hear the whole ending of the second movement, my favorite part of this movement. And that brings us to the third movement, which I will admit is my least favorite movement of the three. With that said, it does have one of my favorite parts of the entire piece, so it's a bit confusing. But anyway, that part is this part right here. And this part comes back a lot in the third movement, and it's perfect every time. Either their coordination is really good naturally, or they've practiced this part a lot. Those are some really fast notes, and I have no idea how easy it is to play on violin, but I'm still really impressed with how coordinated they are. Like at least 90% together, and that's really good. So let's listen to this. How awesome is that? Like, wow. Maybe it's just so fast that it's too fast for me to hear if they're together or not. But the point is to impress the audience, I guess, and I'm part of the audience and I'm impressed. So I guess all I can say is good job. Now let's move to a different part that's really good in this piece, and that is the first time this melody comes up. This part I suspect they must have talked about beforehand, or they're just really good at listening to each other, because most of it is really similar in articulation and phrasing and everything, which I regard as a good thing in this piece. And there's especially one note that they do really well on, and that is this note right here. I love the attack on this note. And if only one of them did it, it would have been weird, but since both of them did it, it's great. It is a syncope, which means that the note is not on the beat, but off beat, and it does make sense to articulate it in this way, even if they haven't talked about it, but they both highlighted it so well that I think they must have talked about it. Either that or Eddy's listening skills are amazing, and his ability to copy what Brett does is incredible. So let's hear it, and I'll try and highlight the note that I'm talking about when it comes up. Now let's quickly listen to my favorite part from this movement, because it's quite short. Yes, my favorite part of this movement is that short. But the reason it is my favorite part is because it is impossible to hear who plays what. Obviously, if you have a score, you can figure it out, but if you just listen to it, you cannot tell who plays which part. Honestly, you can probably not even tell what is in which part. And honestly, let's give some creds to Bach for that, but also to Brett and Eddy for doing it so well. Let's listen to it one more time, but this time without the score. See if you can figure out what belongs in which part, and who plays what. Pretty hard to tell, right? Now the last part of this piece I want to talk about is the ending of the third movement. Once again we get the amazing fast part that they play so well, and of course they finish up with a beautiful ritardando. So let's just listen to that. So now that we've gone through all three movements, I want to do a quick summary. They both play really well, the orchestra plays really well. I have so many favorite parts in this piece that I can't really count them. I have highlighted the favorites of the favorites, but obviously the whole piece is great. I can start the recording at any point and still love what I'm hearing. And with that, I wanted to say thank you so much for watching all the 3 videos I made of the Twoset4mil 4 million subscriber concert. Here's a gold star for you if you watched this whole video, and an extra one if you watched all 3 of the videos. Now the question is, what do you want to hear me talk about next? Leave a comment with your suggestion in the comment section down below, and if you like this video, leave a like. If you like my content in general, subscribe. But as always, no pressure on any of that. And with that, I'll see you next time.